Good evening. All right, so I'm still out here on my vacation, still out here on the porch because it is my favorite place. I have lights. It's a completely dark. I don't know if you can see the darkness next to me, all about me, because it's basically like the forest. Or I don't know. It's not really the forest. What's between? I don't know. The long skinny trees that are just around about lakes. That's where I'm at. So, um, yeah, I got this thing stewing around about hell, and I'm trying to get it right because I was listening to something, and the first thing that I got, um, the first really good point that I got was that hell is not a place of punishment. It's about uh, impartiality, if you will. It's like the impartialness of God. It is the whatever the opposite of love is, which is not hate. What did we figure out? Oh, indifference. Is that what it is? It's like being subject to the indifference of God. And um, the other thing that I got was kind of along those lines because I just really feel like people need to understand this. And it's really crazy to understand it fully and just kind of not be able to explain it to other people who don't understand when it's so like it just seems like something that should be possible to explain. And so when you can't, I think I'm starting to like see, you know, it's kind of like a necklace with a knot in it. It's like I'm starting to see like where this is stemming from, and try to add my 2 cents to get this explained because I know I've done a hell video too. um, and you just got to tackle it from all these different sides to sort of unravel the mystery for those who want it. So I'm going to take another stab at it here. So if you don't understand, and the place of misunderstanding comes from the punishment part of it, or the just the horror of a place of eternal torment. And how could a loving God, blah, 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 right? So, and then the problem then becomes, because we've already had a whole conversation about, it's not about works, it's about believing on the finished work of Christ, and that's how you get in heaven, blah, blah, blah. And then you say, it's not about, if you're, it's not about how good you are, how, whatever, the blood is going to cover the sin. Well, then we turn around and when somebody says, well, how can a loving God send people to hell? We then come back with the argument of how God has to punish. God would be unjust for just letting any old person into heaven. And that is confusing, and rightfully so. Because, and I understand why people are arguing for hell from this perspective, because um, it seems the fairest thing to do, or the most reasonable thing to do, because people understand that you can't just open up all of the jails. You can't just let people walk the streets. And no one would feel, it's the most universally embraced idea that no one really likes the idea of, rapists and child molesters and all of these people entering heaven. No one likes that idea. So that's how you can sort of get people on your side about hell. But I wouldn't say this is a bad strategy, but it is an incomplete strategy because you just got finished saying that anyone who accepts Christ is going to be allowed into heaven, and it's not about being a good person or a bad person. But I think this dilemma is causing people to still kind of cling to a belief that you somehow have to be a good person to get into heaven. Now, obviously, there is some, on the Venn diagram there's going to be some overlap between people who tend to be decent people and the people who are in heaven. And same thing with hell. But we see a lot of people falling through the cracks, as it were. There's people going to hell and seeing their family members there. Uh, Large swaths of family members there. People that they might have seen in life and not thought was particularly evil. And that's because hell is not about punishment. It's not about punishment. It isn't. It just so happens to be that you get punished there because it is a place of torment. But that is not its purpose. What, doggy? My dog is trying to get my attention. I don't know. I can't really. Oh, sorry, I'm facing the wrong way. There he is. Anyways, um, so what I feel like God is wanting to get across is that, and we're already kind of dancing around it, but when you see people are confused about it, this really needs to be emphasized. The strategy that God has gone with is extreme, not extreme, and this isn't like something he had to like work hard to do. This is his nature. He's approaching it. He's using the love offensive. He's using the extreme love tactic to get this job done, which is basically he is just going. I was about to say something that's not appropriate, a phrase that is not really whatever, but he's going all out. He's deciding, listen, I'm gonna go all out in my love. I'm just gonna just just do the highest thing that I can do love wise, and that is going to cast the net, and whoever I catch with that net, that is who is going. That is the strategy. It is a winning strategy. It's a risky strategy because basically, it's not something that anyone does here or anybody would think is smart here. Um, it's giving every single person a second chance, legitimately, just like giving it to them. It would be like if you let a killer out of jail, and they go to court and they do their whole song and dance. I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, and I wish I hadn't done it. And then they go, okay, well, um, we're gonna do the I'm sorry release program, where if you're sorry and you say that you're sorry, we're gonna let you out. No takesy backsies. You're just gonna be let out. Now, there's no society in the world that would probably be able to endure that, I don't think, if you could go into it knowing that that's what could happen. So all you have to do is go before the judge and say, I'm sorry, and then they're just going to let you out. And they can't lock you up again for the same crime. Like literally, you could commit murder again. You can't go back to jail. Like, you could probably, ooh, what is that? Go away. What do you want? What do you want? What are you doing? I don't know what that means. You've got weird hair hanging from your face. You want to get up here with me? Oh my goodness. I have no idea what that means. All right, come on. Good Lord. Hold on. Don't fight me. Oh my gosh. Is that what you want to do? I don't know if that's what you want to do or not. All right. So, anyways, the dog is here now. So Yeah. So yeah, if you get to just go out and say I'm sorry, now you go out and commit murder again. You can't be charged for the previous murder, but you can be charged for the new one. But guess what? All you gotta do is say you're sorry, and you get back let back out. What do you find through that process? Can society stand? Sort of. It probably could, actually. It's not like society would crumble. Like when you think about it, and that's kind of what you have to stop and do for a second. It's like, wait a minute, actually, that'd probably be fine. Like, because it doesn't say that you can't get killed in the process. No one can touch you. It just means that you get to get let out if you say you're sorry. Now, somebody could be, a family member could get fed up, and it's like the people might take that into their own hands if it gets too bad. But let's just say hypothetically that happens. There's going to be some people that are like, haha, suckers, you dummies, you let me out. There's some people that are going to take that second chance and do the best they can with it. And then there's going to be some people that aren't even killers, but because they are so angry at what happened, at other people being let out for murder, and they haven't done any murder, that they end up committing crimes themselves. So with this process, the hearts are revealed. And because God can both kill the body and the soul, he has gone with this method, because after you've lived your life here, he can use that life as a record, as a reference for what he's going to do with you. So, it would be like, yeah, it's like if the police let you go free, but they like put a wire on you and followed you wherever you went after that. It's like, okay, well, now we see what you did with your time. So what God has chosen to do is send his son to die on the cross, which is the highest level of love and sacrifice, because it is literally a free gift for any person to just get off scot-free. Now we can nitpick about how the fact that we don't get to choose to be in this predicament. We just are when we're born here. And if you want to complain about that, that's fine. But yes, a lot of people like to go on and drone on and on about how they just think, they deserve hell, but they're not going to get it. I don't know if I would ever just say that I deserve hell. I don't know if I deserve hell or not. I'm glad that me deserving it is not on the table, because I would hate to have to make that distinction and weigh out my life and go, well, yeah, I think I probably deserve hell. I know that there's things about me that are imperfect that can't be in heaven lawfully, that need to be perfected. I can't say that I deserve heaven. I wouldn't be able to just come out and say that. Would I say, oh, I deserve hell? I can't really say that. But I know when you're born into this world, that is your default position unless you accept Christ. So I think a lot, like I would say, a sliver of what people complain about is the idea that you could be born into an imperfect situation as an imperfect person. And perfection cannot be achieved, even though you can see clearly that it isn't and can't. But a lot of people like to spend their time trying to achieve nirvana or perfection or whatever, or thinking they're going to have multiple lives to be able to do this, and it might take a million years, but they're going to do it. I mean, that sounds like trash to me, but I'd rather just accept the free gift and believe uh, that God is going to grant me perfection. It makes more sense when you look at the world. It looks like we can't do this all on our own. And even if some of us could, that's like 1%, 2%. How many of us go to jobs and who are in the top 1% of sales, of productivity, of whatever? That's not everybody. So that'd be a lot of lives lost, a lot of people on a treadmill for a long time. It makes more sense that uh, God would have us use our humility and not our ability to achieve. But, people, and that's another thing that this whole thing is revealing. People would rather, they just would, it's amazing actually to see who chooses what. It's like they don't want to believe in any of it, and they want to, but they do. You see them trying to achieve something for something. They just won't say that it's that exact system, or they just think life is really just about being your happiest, which also doesn't make sense because there's a lot of people that be left out of that. That's like 90% of the entire globe is not going to be able to achieve the highest possible good where they live. They live in a corrupt country where everything is terrible or something like that. So, yeah, it's a harsh truth, but when you see what God is doing, it's not like there's not a way out. It's not like there's not a way to avoid hell. There is. And it literally is just accepting the finished work of Christ. Now, on top of that, you are going to have to, it's not anything extra that you have to do, but you're going to have to produce fruit in keeping with repentance, meaning just like that killer that gets out of jail he goes through the process and all he has to do is say he's sorry. He's got to show some sorriness. If he gets out of jail and he goes, ha ha, y'all are such suckers, whatever, and he goes out and he goes on the killing spree or whatever, and takes, pains to never get caught, and then he dies and then goes in front of God, is he going to be able to say that he's sorry then? He's like, no, I'm sorry for real now. God's going to be like, you've already shown, you can't say anything now. Your life is a better testimony than you talking to me right now. Like your life is testifying against you right now. Dude, you got to stop with these weird hairball moments. I don't know what you want from me right now. Are you choking? Like, what is going on? Is this the universal sign for a dog choking? Bro, you're being super weird. Anyways, so it's just so ridiculous. It's just like I did all that. I feel like it doesn't make sense. Like it makes sense, but it's not like it's so clear in my mind. I just want it to be just this cinched up thing for people, because it's not that. It's a little bit rough only if you love your sin and you love lawlessness. And we want to believe that those people are all the bad people that break laws. And, all the people that are insufferable that we don't mind if they're in hell because they are insufferable. But the reality is we can't that we can't predict the hearts that are that way. And it might be, the likelihood is that it's someone closest to you. Lots of people, because lots of people are there. I mean, lots more that are going to heaven. And that's a hard thing too. But I think when you look at life, you can sort of see, Jesus himself said, broad is the road that leads to destruction, and narrow is the way that leads to life, and few find it. So even if you find it, it's narrow. It's super narrow. So, like, part of me always thinks like God already anticipated this, and he knows that, he's already prepared himself for the few amount that it's going to be. But then I listen to all of these prophets, and they're talking about, or the people of the NDEs, and they're talking about God just being in so much pain because of the amount of people that aren't and I think that's just God having full access to all of his emotions, and just being able to endure that pain. Like, because I think I talked about in another video, it's like we think that because it's hard for God, or that it's a terrible thing, that he won't go through it. It's like, no, this is about his law. And that's the thing about that I was trying to open with about the indifference thing. It's like, this is about hell is about his law, and his, not the law in terms of the written law, but just like his holiness and his righteousness. And he can't suffer imperfection and unrighteousness being in his presence. That's literally the whole reason. It's like, yeah, that sounds super harsh. Okay, well, he literally died, came down as a man and died for you so that you could come in anyway. So it's like, yeah, you can complain about how stringent that is, but then when you think of what he did to make a way for you, and you still don't accept it, that's what's actually insane. Like, the ball's back in your court. It's like being like, oh, well, the prince said, the king said that you can't marry the prince because you're not a royal whatever. You don't have a royal title. So the prince leaves his entire royal life to come and marry you, and then you're not really feeling him like that. Like, what's really, oh, royalty, it's just, monarchies are so, it's like, okay, yeah, but you also didn't value what he did for you. So, which is worse? Why, like, what does the monarchy have to do with you not recognizing a good thing? It's like, now it's like, oh, well, he left, if he left the castle or whatever to like come be with me, like, that's the only reason why I would marry him anyways, for the castle. So, not interested anymore. It's like, okay, well, that's really important information. So, good to know. Like, that's what this whole thing is, man. So it's not so much that hell is a punishment. It's kind of like, you have this until this date to get your car out of impound, and if you don't get it, we're crushing them. He doesn't have to be mean about that for that to be what it is. He can plead with you up until the day. And that's what we see God doing. It's like, pleading, crying and pleading for you to hear, accept the sacrifice and understand what the stakes are and understand where you are. Because I guarantee you, if you understood what the stakes were, you would take that you accept the gift in a heartbeat and you'd be extremely grateful for it. But, and I think that's kind of like where modern evangelism is kind of just coming from that angle of just, well, maybe people just don't understand what's at stake here, and they try to explain with the God loves you so much and it's so whatever, and the sin is so bad and hell is so real, and just trying to really get that point across, and people are just kind of like, okay. And I don't know that it's because people aren't saying it right or whatever. I just think there's a lot of people who, you know, they do this with stuff in the natural. So of course they're going to do things like this in the spiritual, where they just put off things and they just try and they dismiss it, and because they look around and they might even feel it. They might even feel it as you're talking to them, but then it just gets so intense that they just want to just dismiss it and, brush it off. And then it ends up being their demise. And I think I'm going to top this off with a little cherry that is, what do we call this? Sort of it's not blasphemy, but it's like, what do you call it when you believe something that is not uh, in keeping with doctrine? I forget. But yeah, so I'm going to go ahead and give you my theory. And this is, by the way, it's just a theory that I currently hold. And my theories change. This is one of those that is just on a shelf. It's not written. It's not even written in pencil. It's not even written down. It's not written in stone. It's not even written in pencil, let alone stone. It might not even be written at all. But my current theory, literally just based on one hell testimony that I saw that stuck out on my mind, because he was talking about the lake of fire. And I went through never hearing about the lake of fire from anyone, like no one ever seeing it, to like a whole rash of people were saying that they saw the lake of fire, or they rationalized they saw like a light and they're like, oh, that must be the lake of fire. So, which I don't know, kind of tells me like God is ready to reveal some stuff about it, because it just literally, you just almost never heard anything about it. And now people are seeing it in their dreams and visions. But here's what I'm thinking, because this guy was talking about the lake of fire, and he said that he got, he went to hell. I think he died. He had it. Yeah, he was one of those that he had the experience like during, like he had overdosed on drugs. So, and he like felt himself like going further and further down these, this cavernous, you know, depiction of hell, and he was going down, and he's describing the heat and how it was just like, just it's so crazy how they describe the heat. It's not just like, oh, so hot. Like, it's like they're always trying to get across to you how they can't believe. Sorry, now I'm out here, I'm like hearing noises. I don't know. It doesn't sound like an animal. It just sounds like, but it's a noise. I'm like, bro. Anyway, so, uh, yeah, they're always like describing like how it's like they're in their mind and they're going, there's no way that I can experience this heat. Like it's like a meta thing of like, where they can't believe how hot it is, literally, where they're like, I should be like not alive. I should be dead. Like, and it just keeps, and it's like, okay, it's hotter now. Like, it's like this thing of like, first it's like, okay, I should not even be able to experience this. Then it's like, wow, I'm sensing it actually becoming more intense. Like, how is that even possible? Like, the whole time they're just like, how is this possible? And, it's almost like they just never get to wrap their mind around it while they're there. And so the same thing was happening to him, and that happened to him like multiple times, to where he was just like, I got down to the lake of fire, and he was like, I could feel that my whole being, like my spirit, because he had already been through the whole journey, the whole tour. He'd had the entire tour, and he knew he was a spirit, but he couldn't die. But he was like, it felt like my spirit was just going to explode, and I was just not going to exist anymore. That's what he said. And when he said that, um, and like he came back right after that. And when he said that, I was like, hold up, what? Because I know people have hypothesized that, well, maybe God will just like make you cease to exist or whatever. And, just out of like, maybe like that was the good news, it's like, maybe you won't have to go through hell. So, but I had never before had someone actually go through that experience and say that's what it felt like. And I was like, oh my gosh, what if that is what the lake of fire does? Because no one's in the lake of fire yet. Everyone's in hell. And I was like, bro, what if that is the point? That is what the lake of fire would do, because the Bible says that the lake of fire is like the wrath of God. It's like the not personified, but I don't know. It's like the physical manifestation of God's wrath. So it's like, all of the injustice, everything, every imperfect, not just imperfect, but just really heinous thing that's happened. Hell is not the punishment. And that's why it's so confusing, because I'm just saying the reason why I like this theory is not because it satisfies, well, that is why I like it. It's not because I'm like, so I can't deal with the idea of hell that I like this idea better. It's like this would make it really fits into this thing right here, because we keep saying hell's not a punishment, and God is not going to punish you. But it's like, but we know that there's something about the injustices of the world, and those aren't just going to go whatever. And yeah, there's going to be a judgment, in heaven. And here's the other thing too, because it says in Revelation, because I always wonder this, because it would be like at the end where it says like, when the devil and his angels are all going to go in the lake of fire, which is not even till after the millennial reign. Like this, now we're getting like really into the theology degree seminary stuff here. But it's like they're not going, like the devil is going to be defeated, like Jesus is going to come back. But that's not the end. That's not even the end of the Bible. Like there's 1,000 years after that, after Jesus comes back. And the devil's not going to be defeated. He's going to be defeated, but he's going to be locked up. He's going to be locked up for 1,000 years. And then they're going to let him back out and let him do the same thing he did again. Not like to the same degree. I don't remember how long he'll be out. But he is going to be let out after 1,000 years. Then he's going to apparently be able to deceive somebody after that whole thing. Which is like, well, what's going on with that? That is like a mega, mega sifting. That's a super duper sifting. Because if you are still going to join that fool's team after 1,000 years of Jesus literally ruling and reigning on the earth, like you can go wherever you need to go. Like that is the most insane thing I've ever heard in my life. But apparently it's real, and it's going to be quite a few people, because they're going to try and like sack the city. They're going to try and like take over. And then at that point, the fire of God is going to come down. Like it literally says all this, that this is going to happen. And then they're going into the lake of fire. And what it appears to me is that maybe they are going to be, they're going to be tortured, in eternal torment or whatever. And then there's also this idea of eternal torment, okay? Um, because anybody who's been to hell will tell you that time becomes this like nonsense concept that is not, heaven or hell when you die. Like the way that things happen is just not. Have you been there an hour? Have you been there 100 years? Have you been there whatever? And that's another great thing about this testimony. I mean, this is just this testimony that I'm getting this stuff from. It's like this literally like this 19-year-old kid that went, and he really made me think about some stuff, because not only did he say that thing about the lake of fire, he was like, he was saying like he went to heaven first, or he was in front of God first in heaven. And it was like he fell there from there to hell. And it was like as he was falling, time was just going slowing. And it really just emphasized this whole concept of hell being an eternal torment. And just like how we kind of have a measure of it here, like when you go through something horrible and it messes with your, it's like when time flies when you're having fun is what we say. That's that's real. Like you don't even, it'll be hours and you'll be like, oh my gosh, it's 2 a.m. Same thing when you're going through something terrible and you look at the clock, it's only been 15 minutes. You know what I'm saying? Like, just imagine that on like a times a billion. So I remember him saying, he was like, I felt like I was born in hell, felt like I was raised in hell. He's like, I could have just been there 10 minutes. But he's like, I felt like I was born there. I was raised there. I had never not been anywhere but there. And so this is something, I won't say it's all mental either, because like people like to say that too, which is like a mental thing of your own making, blah, blah, blah. I'm just saying this eternal torment thing is, once you're there, it is eternity, period, point blank. Like it's hard to explain, but it's like, I understand because of the parameters of the spirit. It's like you just got to be like, okay, just say that you're there for 100 years, and that's just what it's going to have to be, because that's just, you're talking about the afterlife at this point. So, but when he said that he felt like he was going to split, like his spirit was just going to be destroyed when he got to the lake of fire. I was like, okay, that sort of explains why, like, this whole idea of a second death, because he says, and then you'll go to the lake of fire, or the lake of eternal torment, which is the second death, right? Because the first death obviously is you dying, and we think the second death is being in hell, because it's this place of eternal torment. And then it also says, like, after that whole hullabaloo with the devil and his angels, and then he goes to the lake of fire, and then it's like, okay, and then the books will be open, and every creature in the earth, under the earth, whatever, is going to go up to whatever to be judged and see if their name is written in the Lamb's Book of Life or whatever. And I'm like, okay, why are we doing that though? Because I thought that people went to hell and that's the end of that. Like, why is every creature from everywhere, heaven, hell, or wherever, going up and being judged? It's like, what's that? I don't, it's one of those things where you go, it's the Bible. You know what I'm saying? It's like, when we get there, we'll figure it out. But it's like, that would explain that. If you could somehow make it out of hell, be there eternally, because you are there eternally, like that, you just have to understand that your sentence is, you're robbed of any feelings of hope, or that God can hear you or see you, or you're separated from him. So that is eternity, folks, no matter how long you're there. I mean, Like we are sheltered from all of this from being on the earth and having time and having been given time. But God knows what he's talking about all the time. So he says, and then I was like, okay, so let's say somehow you make it through hell, like and you realize like I made the stupidest mistake in the history of ever, and then you could go before God and you might actually be able to. It's like, why is he judging you? Like if you're already, if that's the place of sentencing, like why are you going up to judge and to be so you could change? What would be the point? Like that to me just seemed really like over the top. Like some people think hell is over the top. I think it'd be over the top to like be to send him to hell, then bring him out of hell, let him go stand in front of God before heaven, and be like, yeah, no, your name's not in here. Like it's not supposed to be anyway. Like we knew it wasn't, but we just thought, and then send him back down there. That doesn't make any sense unless you can actually make it out somehow. But that might be very hard. But you could. And then everyone after that goes to the lake of fire. And then it's like their spirit, the lake of fire is so hot that it destroys your spirit, or it returns to God or something. I don't know. But I was just thinking, like, what if that's the process, then the second death would be your spirit being destroyed. And then I was like, oh, so hell, it would be like, it's like the garbage disposal or something. It's like the final, it's like the drain. It's like you're going down and with the everything that's going to be, you're in the trash compactor. And then I was like, yo, isn't that literally how it's described? Like it's something about like God, like Jesus describes it as like Gehenna or whatever, which is like the trash heap. I'm like, dude, anytime you come across a theory and it starts filling in like serious like not, it makes sense in your mind. It's like, it's got to both make sense in your mind and enlighten what Jesus has already said. And it's got to do multiple jobs. And that is doing a lot of jobs. That's doing a lot of jobs and clearing up a lot of things. It's clearing up a lot of things. It's making what Jesus said like make total sense, like he's talking like a regular person to you and not in like far off symbols and whatever's. It's like, I don't know. So just to recap, my theory that I will is literally just my theory, is that hell is literally like a trash compactor. You still don't want to go there. But we think, because of the way that God emphasizes it, which he doesn't say it like the way that we say it. We think that it's because it's the final, like it's here or there. It's just a terrible place. It's hard to get out of that place. It's near impossible to get out of that place. But if you somehow manage to not go insane from being there for literally eternity, because however long you're there, it's eternity when you get there. Time is going to slow down to the point where that is your reality. If you somehow manage to make it out of that and you make it to the throne judgment and your name somehow is, it's like, what I understood it is like, okay, at every single point, God is saving souls until to the point where hell itself is sort of this last ditch It's like when the generators kick on. It's like it's the last ditch thing that can get people to be saved somehow. Because it's like, okay, we're here. Now we have grace because we can't see God. We don't see nothing. We don't know nothing. So we have grace. We accept the message. That's one level of, whatever. Now it's like, oh, rapture time, 7 years of tribulation. Okay, that's worse. That's real bad, but it's still, can't see God, can't see the devil, and you can't see what's going on in the spirit. It's still a time of grace. Not as good as the first time of grace, but it's still the grace. Okay, now you've died. Boom. You know it all. You know you messed up. You're in hell. God's up there. You didn't pick the wood. But so now you have, what can you possibly do? You had faith up here that you could use. You just believe and just hold on and believe. Down here you have, okay, you missed it. That thing that happened was the rapture, but there's still going to be deception. There's still going to be, you still have to have a certain amount of faith. You got to hold on. You got to, now you got to die. You got to prove, your faith. You got to make it through. You got to be martyred. Have to. Here's an option. Down here, now you got to. Now you're down here. You're dead already. You got the knowledge that everyone else has. What can you do? What can you give God at this point? Like, if you can make it through that without losing your mind and still accept the free gift of God, like you make it through the white throne judgment. Now you're just a soul and you're up there and you make it through that. I think he is really just saving souls all the way until, and then when there's absolutely, positively no other thing to be saved, you get destroyed. Or you return back to him or whatever, or your essence returns back or whatever. And does the devil get destroyed? I don't know. Or is he literally just in the torment? Like, is he a spiritual being that's just like we get destroyed, but they don't because I don't know. I literally just made it all up. But I think that is what's happening. And that the second death is that death. The first death is you either going to heaven or hell. And then, a man's appointed once to die, right? So you die once, you go to heaven. What's the second death then? If we are appointed once to die. Okay, that is if you're in Gehenna, which is the trash compactor, hell, not a punishment. It's a holding cell until you make it to court. Boom, white throne judgment. Then you stand before God. We open up the books. Your life is judged. We open the books. Is your name in there? Yes or no? You make it in there. Even if it's 5 people, if he only saves 5 people through that, I think he's going to do that. Because God can do this all day. Do you know what I'm saying? But it's literally like the siftiest sifter that's going to sift the siftest. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's like he's not leaving nothing. He's not leaving anything behind. If there is any gold that could be found in hell, in the eternity of hell, he's going to get that piece out, that nugget out. And then after that, I think he's going to just send it all to the lake of fire. Like, I just think that's what he's doing. And I don't want to say, well, it's not in the Bible, because it is, but I'm just piecing together what is both in the Bible and from what I've heard from testimonies. And that is my theory. So, yeah. So I'm going to make it extra long so that if you want to hear my heresy, you've got to wait a long time. And hopefully I won't get a whole bunch of flack from that. But yeah. So that was fun. I just sat and talked about hell till like 11 o'clock at night. So Well, sweet dreams, everybody. Yeah, be blessed.